So this is like, Jess, this is like the dugout. We're in the waiting, like the crowd is someplace else and we're on deck in this little zone.
Right. We are the only people who can be seen and heard. Everybody else can ask questions on Q&A or in the chat. And yeah.
Cool.
So we won't see them either, right?
Correct.
Huh. Weird.
So far, we have about 20 people joining us.
Okay.
And this is also live streaming on Facebook. So on there we have 2 people.
We're gonna
be something like that, and I'm recording it as well. So
okay.
Jennifer should be here in a little bit. She was gonna kind of speak at the top here, so I'll just wait a little bit longer. And Jeff, he might be here soon too. Hello, Nybergs. They said hello in the chat.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, I didn't know if you guys can see the chat or not. Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah.
All panelists. Uncharted territory, these Zooms.
Yeah, right. Do you know who's out there?
Yes, I can see who is out there.
Okay.
1 second. Somebody's texting me.
Robert, it's nice to see you not living under a rock in Colorado someplace.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, I couldn't hear you guys right when I got on the call, so now I can hear you. So I apologize if you had said hello to me earlier and I didn't acknowledge it, but hi, everyone.
Robbie, did you grow like a mountain man beard when you were roughing it out there?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's good.
No, I actually
did. With your bare hands?
Yeah, I was living off the land.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Got 30 people almost done here.
Yeah. Just making sure none of my panelists are in
timeout.
Right. I don't know. Let me text Jennifer really quick here.
So the only people we can see are the people who are on the panel, and then everybody else just knows who they are. But okay. So there's Allison and Robbie and Thomas.
Yeah,
and
I see.
There's a spy.
Hi.
There's a spy.
Sarah's here.
Oh, it's like, how would you?
No, I was not talking to myself. Sorry. I suppose it seemed like I was. But...
It's okay if you were.
Oh, okay.
We're all a little lonely these days, so. Yeah.
I have 2 cats. I'm not lonely. Aww.
As if on cue.
Right.
Robbie has a black cat.
Oh, sweet.
Oh, sweet. Aw. What's his or her name? Oh, he can't hear me.
This is Chauncey. He's very friendly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is he the only cat you have?
Yes, I actually adopted him out of the backyard at my old place. He was
that's good.
He needed a home. He just kept coming back to me. But
Oh, that's nice.
This is the one that Will Cedeno got inebriated on catnip.
I think so.
The whole bag at once.
Yeah. Well, he's a good cat. Yeah.
Good. So it looks like Jennifer's on, but without video.
That's okay. I think she's getting there. She might be.
We've got some people in the waiting room too, it looks like.
Oh, waiting room.
Yeah.
In for the panelists?
Oh, maybe it's I'm looking at attendees, but maybe never mind.
Yeah, no, don't. That's.
Yeah. Zoom never is intuitive.
I don't know how to put Jen on video, but she can.
I'm here. I'm here. It's just that
Yeah, sorry, my work computer decided to do an entire biosystem update as I was logging in. So I'm using a different computer and I'm gonna have to reset the video on this computer, but I can see all of you and I can talk, so hello.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to say welcome to everybody, and thank you for taking the time out of your Labor Day weekend to join us here on Zoom. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're also live streaming this to Facebook. So we'll have some people watching us on there, and I will also record this just so we have this discussion for all of our students who couldn't make it this evening. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Jess. I'm the administrator for the SDSYO. So you may have seen my name floating around on some things, but this is me. So thank you for attending once again tonight. We're just going to briefly go over a few details about the upcoming season, including the handbook. Sorry, my headphones are yelling at me. The handbook, the safety protocols, a little bit about our upcoming virtual rehearsals, which will start next week, and also some of our extra programs, including SUA's Creativity Club and Camarada. But to kick things off, Jennifer, who spoke just a little bit ago, she's sort of the voice of Oz here. She would just like to take a moment here to welcome you all as well. So this is Jennifer, the Executive Director of the SDSO.
Hi everyone. Sorry, the computer I'm using just won't cooperate with the video setting, but it's wonderful to see all of you. And thanks for joining us on Labor Day weekend to welcome back the South Dakota Symphony Youth Orchestra. Thomas will talk a little bit later about how we're starting this season virtually and then getting into in-person rehearsals in October. You must know that the South Dakota Symphony Youth Orchestra team has been working very, very hard to ensure that this season is musically rich and provides the type of orchestral education that we know is so important to all of us and to you and your students, while also, of course, having safety and health at the top of mind. We are patterning our health and safety protocols for SDSYO after what the South Dakota Symphony Orchestra is doing to begin rehearsals and come back to play in person together at the end of September. The first concert is Saturday, October 3. We are also, of course, making decisions in line with CDC guidelines and with the extraordinary help of the next person who's going to speak tonight, Dr. Allison Suttle, who is our state and local health advisor when it comes to how we get together to play music safely. Dr. Allison Suttle is the Chief Medical Officer at Sanford Health. She is also the Vice President of the South Dakota Symphony Orchestra Board. So we are very blessed to have her on our team. And I'm now going to turn things over to her to give you kind of a view of what the coronavirus looks like, if you will, in the state of South Dakota, and then how we're sort of applying safety and health protocols to the SDSYO. We're kind of starting right out of the gate here with safety and health because it is so much at the top of everyone's minds as kids are going back to school, high school and middle school sports are starting up, right? And and so many people are now going back to work and working in person with each other, and with the orchestra season coming back, and with SDSYO coming back, we want to make sure that we address all of your questions, and that you know that the student safety and health is at the top of our list when it comes to planning, which is why we're starting out with this. And then we'll get to the music and the creativity in a little bit. On that front, I'd like to just commend Thomas Fortner, Jeff Paul, and Jess Johansson for their creativity, their flexibility, their adaptability, as we have really been bending over backwards and jumping through a lot of hoops to figure out how to do this SDSYO season. And so I'm very excited that we get to come back and make music together. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Suttle.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yes, very well done. So yeah, my name is Allison. I'm an OBGYN and work in administration at Sanford, as Jennifer said. So I'm talking to you today as that kind of local expert as it relates to COVID. That's kind of been my 24/7 job since January. So it's been a lot of months of work preparing our health system for COVID, but also working with mayors and governors and departments of health and school boards and all different other factions, because it takes a whole community to manage a pandemic, not just the health system. Obviously, it's a public health effort and a public health issue. So, but I have other hats, and I would say my other hat is being a member of the board and understanding and knowing how important music is to our communities, and the function of the symphony and the youth symphony, how important they are to our society and to our communities. So I'll speak from that lens a little bit as well. And then I think my final lens is, I guess my final two would be, one as a parent. I have a 16-year-old who just had COVID and got over it. So dealing with those fears and concerns and worries. But then also I'm a former youth symphony member. Back when I was in high school in the 80s, I played at the youth symphony and in junior high, and again, still in the 80s. So quite a while ago, I was a youth symphony member. And so I can think back and remember how important it was for me to be playing with my colleagues in a symphony, and how much that shaped my life, and how important it is that we get the students together to be able to play together, and what that means for them, for their long-term success in life. So I'll start with my COVID lens and really tell you, if we think about it from, it really came into being in December, and we heard about it in China, and where we've come since then is really a long way. And like all new viruses, where none of us are immune to it, it's novel, so none of us could have ever been exposed to it before. That allows it to really go through the whole community very quickly. And if you're in a very populated state like New York or Washington, a lot of people get sick really quickly. So that whole surge and what we saw early on is something that happened, but it's not likely to happen again. Now that it's spread throughout our communities, we'll see ebbs and flows in the amounts of cases, but it'll never rise to kind of that big of an event again. We have, as a health system, routinized and been able to identify this virus, diagnose it, and treat it. So we now know and have a system in our systems, in the clinic, in the hospital, in the ERs, where we can identify it, begin treatment, and we know how to manage it. We're learning more, and there's new therapies coming out. But if we look from February till now in August, how long people are sick, how sick they get, how many people are actually dying from this illness, all of those have significantly decreased. So we've been able to learn more about the virus in all of these months to be able to say, this is a respiratory viral illness, like a lot of other respiratory viral illnesses. There are some uniquenesses, and we're perfecting our ability to handle those. But as an individual who might get the disease, you can be very confident that it's diagnosable, there are treatments, and people do very well. My son, who had it at 16, he's kind of in a dormitory setting. He had a fever for one day, some body aches, lost his sense of taste, So when he was eating spicy food, he could feel heat, like the pain, but he couldn't taste any flavor. So, and what he enjoyed was he had then another 10 days of just hanging out and watching television and not having to do schoolwork. So it wasn't that big of a deal. The majority of cases fall into those ranges in the teenagers. And now, obviously that's not 100%, but that's true of every single viral respiratory illness. There are a small percentage of individuals who either have a weakened immune system, maybe for a genetic reason we don't know about, or for a known reason that might have more severe reactions. So that's why it's important to stay safe, and the best ways to stay safe have not changed, and those have been very consistent. It's washing your hands, it's maintaining distance, it's wearing a mask. You know, all of those things are the basics for preventing the spread of a respiratory virus. And those have been consistent throughout. I think one of the things that Jennifer mentioned that Thomas and the staff have been able to do is to be very flexible. And that's because we continue to learn more about the virus. So something that was truth and what we needed to do 2 months ago, now we've learned something new, and so things have to change. So what this takes as we all go through this pandemic together, and as we all have kind of the priority of getting the students together to play music, to produce music together and learn together, is that we have to have grace and flexibility and understanding that we all have a common goal, and it's to get the kids together to play music. And with that in mind, you know, things might change and pivot. I've seen that as the symphony, the South Dakota Symphony, we've created 4 or 5 contingency plans, depending on where we're at with the stage of the virus. And you need that, and you need to do that. And communication is key. So the more we communicate, the better as things move along. I will be a resource throughout this pandemic. I'm not going anywhere, and Jennifer and I talk frequently on the phone, so and email. So I am a resource throughout the course of this. So if there is a reason to change or something to pivot, you know, I've got Jennifer on speed dial to kind of say, hey, I just found this out. We need to think about this. So know that we are constantly keeping up to date with what we know. Jennifer, with her connections, has done a lot of research and knows a lot about the literature that's out there with instruments, wind instruments, and getting orchestras together. So that data is becoming apparent, and we're learning more and more about how these viruses can spread within a chorus or within an orchestra. So you'd be amazed at how much work has gone into the plans. As far as a vaccine goes, you know, I do think we will be experiencing a vaccine during the Youth Symphony season. I've been involved with conversations with both North Dakota and the South Dakota Department of Health and getting prepared to mass distribute vaccinations. So we are gearing up for this, and I would not be surprised if this happens at the end of this year or at the early start of next year. They're going to do it in 4 phases. The first phase will be for first responders like firemen, policemen, people working in the critical care units, in the COVID units, people working in nursing homes, and the nursing home residents. That will be kind of the first priority, and those are the ones that are most, you know, at risk. Then there'll be really mass distribution, and that'll be kind of the second phase, third phase. Fourth phase will be really trying to catch up any of those individuals or pockets where we haven't been able to get the virus. We've done this before. We did this with H1N1, mass distribution of a vaccine. We worked with our states, so we're dusting off those plans and figuring out ways and stocking up on freezers so that we can have virus vaccines in locations so that we can vaccinate lots of individuals at one time. So that is coming, and I think for me that provides a little bit of hope to at least start thinking about a future where more people are immune, so that some of the things that we do can change a little bit in terms of the distancing, or being able to now be indoors maybe together a little more, some of those different things. So we'll see how the world responds with the vaccine. So that's kind of my COVID update. I would say as a board member of the South Dakota Symphony, we early on got together and discussed this season and felt very strongly that it was our responsibility as the board, and it's the responsibility of the symphony to carry out its mission. And that mission is really to bring music to bring people together through music. And, you know, we knew we needed to continue to try to figure out how to do that. We didn't know how to do it, but we weren't going to just kind of say, sorry, the season's over, there's COVID, we're just going to take a break. That we were going to really kind of think through, how do we continue with our mission? And I think that's carried over to the South Dakota Youth Orchestra as well, where we really need to think about what is our mission, what is our purpose, how do we do that and keep everybody safe, rather than just take a pause. And so I applaud, you know, all of the individuals that work at the symphony office and at the youth office to really take that under, you know, to respectfully say, yeah, let's do it, let's figure it out. It's what we need to do. As a parent, I'll just say, you know, these opportunities are once in a lifetime. The years are precious to be in middle school and high school. There aren't that many of them. And there's a lot learned in one season in an orchestra. That's just those many concertos or symphonies that you don't get to play. And I remember symphonies that I played in youth orchestra. And I remember symphonies that I played, you know, when I was in my college orchestra, and you get to play them once and you learn those parts and you remember all the different parts and who comes in when and who plays what. And that a season off is a season of not having that experience with that music, and you don't really get that back. So thank you all as parents for being willing to be here and get the students together as well, because it really does take all of us. I think I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Like she mentioned, we do have a Q&A feature, or if you wanted to ask any questions in the chat, we're happy to collect those throughout the meeting this evening, and we can get those to Allison. For the purpose of time now, I'm just going to continue moving along through the meeting tonight. I put in the chat a link to the presentation that I will be drawing from this evening. So if you kind of wanted to follow along and get those bullet points of what we'll be talking about during the meeting, you can certainly follow along there. I am also going to try to share my screen. So let's see how that goes. Okay.
So are we doing the Q&A right now with Dr. Suttle, or?
Let me see if I have some questions. I didn't a second ago.
Can I start with one?
Sure.
Hi, Allison. Thank you so much for joining us. And first of all, I want to point out to all of our parents and students that look what playing an instrument in an orchestra can make you. You end up like somebody like me or Jeff or Sue or Robbie playing an instrument in an orchestra, or you can end up being the big boss doctor at a hospital. So,
listening to classical music in the hall whenever I get a chance.
Right. So we've been hearing in the news about lately with the situation now in South Dakota, like the numbers are increasing. What's your analysis of that? It seems that the hospitalization rate hasn't gone up. Is that probably because the younger population that's getting it? And do we see maybe a latency effect of the younger people get it and then they interact with their older relatives, and then you'll start to have more customers in the hospital? How does that work? Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's the broad scale of how the virus spreads. It comes to the coast first because that's where it's coming from across, you know, from abroad, sweeps through major metropolitan areas, goes to the south where there's more population, and then comes here. So not surprising that we would now have our kind of increase in surge. We've also had increase in activity with Sturgis and state fairs and different things, and people opening up and getting more people together. In February, it was about 24% of our positive cases in Sanford Health. 24% were in people 30 years old and younger. Now it's about 52 to 53% of our positive cases are in that age demographic. So it's definitely shifting to that age demographic. And that's where we're seeing it. You're much less likely to be hospitalized if you're in that age group. So that's why it also takes about 2 to 3 weeks for that 20-year-old population to then get it into the older population. The nursing homes are now required to monitor their employees and residents on a routine basis, sometimes twice a week, sometimes once a week, sometimes monthly, depending on the incidents within their locations. I think we've gotten smarter about knowing who gets more sick and how to separate older from younger individuals. So yes, I think that is what we're seeing. But the same rules still do apply for all age groups, and for any age group is to wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart, well-ventilated spaces, washing your hands frequently. All of those things will help continue, prevent the spread. The other thing is, if you do become a positive individual, doing your isolation for 10 days and knowing how to stay away from the other members of your household during that isolation is important. If you're a close contact where the state reaches out to you and says, hey, you were within 6 feet of someone for 15 minutes, then quarantine and stick to that quarantine. It's a full 14 days where you need to, if you have to be out in public, fine, but make sure you're wearing a mask. If you can, try to stay home and minimize your contact with others and truly do those things. That really prevents, the virus only survives if it gets to another person that has never had the virus. So the more we continue, minimize that, the less the spread will occur. So yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you for addressing that. Yeah, I know that speaking as I'm 30 years old. Hello, everybody. So I'm kind of in that middle ground where my younger colleagues sort of feel invulnerable, and yet I've spoken to my own doctor, pulmonologist, we'll leave it at there, who's been in the ICU treating people, saying that he's seen people younger than me in the hospital. My younger brother, PhD student, doing everything he possibly can. He teaches anatomy to med students, and he got sick. He got very ill, and he has no pre-existing conditions. So he didn't die, thankfully. So I can't have his room, but it was no fun. And so it sounds like you're saying that we're all, of course, trying to protect the most vulnerable, but the rest of us also have some really, some danger potentially of having a really bad month or two if we get this.
I'm gonna jump in.
I think it froze up a second here.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump in. This is Jennifer. Jess, you probably have health and safety protocols on your agenda. So I think now would be a good time to just kind of dive into explain exactly what the expectation is of the students when they do come into the rehearsal space.
Okay.
And get a little bit more detail there, since we're getting some questions coming in that are sort of addressed, so you can address that.
Okay. Can everybody see what is on the screen now as far as the SDSYO safety protocols? Okay, great. So the way I sort of broke this down on our protocols is sort of before rehearsal, during rehearsal, and after rehearsal. So this first section is before you're arriving to rehearsal, and this is of course talking about when we're planning to do the in-person rehearsals later this fall in October. Much like Allison said, please monitor your health closely during each of our concert cycles. Try to avoid large gatherings, unnecessary travel, etc. Students who have tested positive and are experiencing symptoms, first of all, just please let me know right away. And please rest assured also that any and all absences related to feeling sick, or if you think that you've been in contact with a positive individual, this will not count against you whatsoever. The important thing is to let us know, and you can do that as confidentially as you would like, and we'll kind of go from there. Additionally, it kind of sort of spells out here any student testing positive. You must be fever-free without medication, must test negative, and again, no absences will be marked against you. Okay, there we go. So the next part will be once you do arrive to rehearsal. The plan is, as of now, to rehearse at George McGovern Middle School here in Sioux Falls. They have an entrance fairly close to the music area where we will be at, and that will be designated with signs upon your arrival. We have a schedule in place right now that I will be publishing to you all very soon for our in-person lessons, in which it has the rehearsal time staggered to make all of our groups sort of come with as little interaction with other people as possible. We won't be using the instrument rooms in the school. Any instrument unpacking will be used right around your seats in your kind of 6-foot area. You can tuck things under your chair, or in some cases we may have a chair next to you where you can place stuff. But just to avoid congregating in several areas of the school, all unpacking of instruments will take place at your seat. Along with that, because we had to keep our ensemble sizes at a certain size, we won't unfortunately be able to allow visitors right away during the in-person rehearsals, just to keep the social distancing protocols in effect with the amount of people in the room. Highlighted here in big, to echo also what Allison said, all students and staff members will be required to wear masks whenever in the rehearsal building. In this case, it would be George McGovern School. So this will be as soon as you go through the front doors. At the check-in desk, you will be expected to have a mask on. We will have disposable masks available at check-in, where you can have them there, but they will be required. I believe I break it down a little more by instrument on the next page here. But also sort of along with the check-in process with the masks, I will also be doing a temperature check and asking the wellness questions of everybody, either me or another staff person, that is. So I'm sure you've been familiar with these before, but these are just sort of a guideline of what we will be using there. So during the rehearsal, physical distancing will be practiced. We will be making 6-foot by 6 feet areas for all students. An exception will be made for trombone players. They get an extra 3 feet. And again, if you and your sibling are in the same group, we consider that a household, so you don't necessarily have to adhere to the 6 feet social distancing. But for other students in your ensemble, please make sure to try and be as spaced out as possible. And again, to sort of mitigate the flow of everybody going to and from rehearsals, we'll have signage. Entry into the rehearsal room will be regulated either by myself or another staff member. So you won't be able to enter the room or exit the room without a staff member admitting you or excusing you. And that includes any sort of restroom breaks, which we're going to try to incorporate into each rehearsal time. But there will be no exceptions for people to leave the rehearsal room without prior written notification. Again, students will not be sharing music stands, instruments, or sheet music this year to make sure everybody's spaced out. So I will, as always, have extra copies of music, but you're not going to be able to rely on your stand partners this year. You will be your own stand person. So here's where I've sort of broke it down a little bit as far as instrument goes. Wind and brass, there's still a little debate, I think, over what all needs to be done for wind and brass, but for starters with us, we're going to have winds and brass players will be required to wear masks unless they're physically playing their instrument. We will also be providing, if you don't have them, bell coverings for all wind instruments. I know some schools provide them and some of you may already have them. They will be required, but we will also be providing those for you. Noticed again the extra arm room for the trombones. And for all of my fellow trumpet brothers and sisters, we will be having little pads on the floor for your spit valve usage at every rehearsal as well. So these things listed here will be provided by us. You won't necessarily be responsible for bringing them unless you have your own system and new COVID accessories that you'd like to bring with you. And again, just reiterating, for strings and percussion, they are required to wear masks at all times during the rehearsal. No talking will be allowed without a mask on. So this would be after the rehearsals, just to sort of reiterate what I was saying about trying to get the flow of students minimal. You are to stay in your seats until an SDSYO staff member dismisses you. So once rehearsal's over, you'll pack up your stuff right there at your seat. You'll be dismissed from the classroom. There will be a period between each group in the rehearsal space in which SDSYO staff will disinfect all of the chairs and music stands and percussion instruments or anything that's kind of been publicly used. This to say that it's going to be very important this season as you leave the room to make sure that you have all of your belongings with you. I'll try to do my best to sort of keep an eye on things as I'm dismissing people, but please take it upon yourselves to be responsible in that regard. Again, all surfaces in the rehearsal space will be disinfected before and after each group rehearses. We'll have sanitizing stations upon check-in and within each classroom, which will have gloves available and hand sanitizer. Again, disposable masks will be provided. And these will all be very much applied to our first concert later in December, but I'll have more specific as far as like location and flow information for that a little closer to when our concert will be done. So those are our safety protocols, just sort of a deep dive. Panelists, I welcome you. Thomas has his mask on. I have my disco one here.
I think you're safe. Figured out how to transmit itself that way. I have a question though. Is that all right if I cut in?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, Sarah. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. The question actually maybe would be best to address Allison about it. I was just kind of, I've been kind of wondering on the question of masks. I've been paying really close attention to kind of how that's evolved since the middle of March, just like the recommendations for it. And because it's gotten so politicized and, you know, so anyway, I've been digging into some of the CDC library that they have online, and I found some things that seem to contradict the conventional wisdom. For instance, there was a study in May of this year on the spread of infectious disease and the efficacy of masks for that with flu-like, with influenza. And it was, I think there were 14, it was a sort of a meta study. So there were 14 separate trials, and it all seemed to indicate that it actually didn't really have much of an effect in terms of containing the spread. And I suppose that's for any number of variables that may or may not exist in, you know, broader reality. But I guess I'm just kind of wondering, what is the science that's like, where do you know of the specific stuff? I'd be interested to read it if you could like direct me toward that, because I've heard all sorts of things too. Like, well, Sue has a student whose mother is a public health nurse, and she wears masks and she's, you know, for it definitely. But she also said that one of the worst things you can do is to be standing behind someone who has an ill-fitting one, because it can come out the back and kind of focus it in that direction. And so I guess I'm just wondering how that's all accounted for, and in a space where there are, you know, different drafts and things like that, depending on whether it's inside, outside. There's so many variables, I suppose it's hard to account for, but as far as what you know about, you know, where that comes from, do you know? Like,
well, I think you need to, I think as far as thinking about masks, we need to get back to the virus itself. I think that's what we've tried to do, you know, is just get back to the science of the virus, because it can get very confusing very quickly. And a lot of studies that are looking at spread, but it's not necessarily spread of infective virus, it's spread of aerosol. So The virus is spread via droplets. It's a quite heavy virus compared to the flu virus. So the influenza virus versus a coronavirus are very different viruses. So it's a heavy virus. So it's typically.
Does that, sorry, I just wanted to, does that mean when you say that it's heavy,
Means it actually weighs more. It's an RNA virus. That's a bigger virus. So it's a heavier virus. So the spread of a coronavirus typically does need those droplets. It also needs to be very close contact for a close amount of time. So wearing a mask is always going to be better than not wearing a mask. Wearing one that's fitting better is going to be wearing one that's not fitting as well. But in general, wearing masks, especially if we think about like the students, that they'll be wearing masks and they'll be 6 feet apart, and they will be absolutely welcome to stay home if they don't feel well at all, and not try to push it and come if they're maybe sick. Those are all different barriers in between you and the virus. So what we see, even in households where there's an individual who's sick, the percent transmission, if you're living in the same house, is only about 30%. So it's not, and that's people not wearing any masks. So it is a heavy virus. You do have to get a pretty good load over time for you to become infected and then get it. So rather than kind of focusing on the masks and what type of mask and how to wear them and that, I think back to the basic biology of the virus and know that you're putting barriers between yourself. The 6 feet is adequate. Adding a mask to that is another addition. People aren't going to be there if they've been exposed, because now we can do contact tracing. If they're sick, we know the symptoms, so they'll be staying home. So all of these are additional barriers to make, I think, what we've proposed here a very safe environment for the students. I do think there's all sorts of mask etiquette, ways to wear your mask and different things like that. But I think any mask is better than no mask, just because those droplets can't spread when there's something between you and a sneeze.
Okay. Are there any safety concerns for like people with asthma and stuff like that? I remember seeing that on the WHO's recommendation list that it's not recommended for people with certain respiratory kinds of problems like that.
You know, wearing masks, you're going to get all the oxygenation you need. So I haven't heard anything that, as far as a concern, that any asthmatics should not be wearing a mask. You know, I think it should be safe.
No matter the kind and no matter how long, is that?
Not that I've heard. I guess I wouldn't know the details of that data as much. I think at that point, you're probably best to have the student talk to their pediatrician or talk to their pulmonologist if they have bad asthma to get better advice as far as which masks might be the best for them.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. In an effort to kind of keep chugging along on our agenda, I put a little note here in the chat. If you do have any additional questions, please feel free to email them to me. If they're specifically for Dr. Suttle, I can certainly forward those to you and make sure everybody here in attendance gets those answers back. And to anybody, you know, within the organization, I'll get those out to anybody. So please, whether it's in the chat or if you want to privately email me any of your questions in regards to the safety protocols or any of the information shared tonight, please feel free to let me know and we will get those answered as soon as possible. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation again here. I'm so good at this. Okay. So the next item on the agenda for here is just to sort of do a deep, quick dive into our handbook policies for this year. This is sort of across the board if everything were to be as normal. So Please apply this to both in-person and virtual lessons this season. So firstly, we're just going to sort of reiterate some of our attendance policies. It's expected all of our rehearsals, dress rehearsals, concerts, special performances, and events, including virtual and in-person lessons. For the virtual lessons, same protocol with absences. If you know that you're not going to be available to attend a virtual rehearsal, please just email me within 2 weeks in advance and it will be excused. Just to reiterate, once again, it has to be through email just so it can have the proper channels of me backing that up and documenting in your account. So verbal and text messages are not acceptable. Please back those up with an email. My notification email is right there. As always, exceptions are always made for emergency situations, any school, church events. All of those will be excused. All you have to do is make sure that you notify me as soon as you know of these absences. Along hand, if you have a substantial amount of absences throughout the years, just know that your eligibility in the concert may be up to the discretion of your conductor. So again, please make sure that you're letting me know of any absences as soon as you have them. They'll all be excused as long as I know about them. So just please let me know. Again, with last year, once we get down to concert time, dress rehearsal is mandatory. Again, there are special circumstances that sometimes we allow, but it's always just the best policy to let me know as soon as possible of any absences. Along with that, conduct, you're expected to be the wonderful students that we all know that you are, even in these virtual rehearsals. Please treat them as if they were like normal and everybody is in the room with you. It's important to be attentive, listening, using your pencil to write down what the conductors are saying. All of that same sort of stuff still applies. There's a little more information here directly from our handbook if you'd like to do a deep dive on that on your own. Just a couple of quick now calendar highlights. We will be beginning next week with our virtual rehearsals. Those will be all throughout the month of September, every Sunday and Monday, depending on which group you were placed in. And our hope as of now is to begin our in-person rehearsals starting on October 4th at George McGovern. So the next thing I'd like to sort of talk to everybody about is our virtual rehearsals and how those will look this year.
Jazz?
Yes.
Jazz, I'm just going to step in here for a second. And if we're at the conclusion of the health and safety protocols section of the agenda, then I'm just going to thank Dr. Suttle for joining us today and encourage all of you who are joining the webinar to email any health and safety questions with regard to the coronavirus to Jess. And if the staff cannot answer them, we will direct them to Dr. Suttle, and she will be happy to respond as well. And we'll get the answers out to everyone. So I encourage you to send your questions along. And thank you so much, Allison, for joining us tonight.
Yeah,
yes, thank you.
And really, all questions. If you're thinking of a question, likely there's about 5 other parents that have the same question. So don't hesitate. Send them in. I'm happy to reply to those. Thank you all. I'll look forward to concerts in the future.
Thank you, Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Well, Thomas, since you're still kind of right there, did you just want to go ahead and start talking a little bit about how these virtual rehearsals will look? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Jess. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody on this chat, including Dr. Allison Suttle. We're so lucky to have somebody of her caliber at our disposal. So once again, please, I see we have a few questions in the chat, and we'll have to send those to Dr. Suttle. I'd also like to take this chance to embarrass Jess and thank her so much for working her tail off all summer long, all since the spring. We've had so many different plans, and it's finally culminated in creating this thing that we have here, which we're confident that no matter what happens with the virus and with any potential shutdowns or openings up, either way, it could get much better or much worse. We're very happy with the plan that we have, that we're going to be able to still deliver a really valuable music educational experience to you all. And I could not do that without Jess, without Jeff and his his ideas and his creativity, as well as now we have our new family of Camerata chamber music folks. And of course, our leadership of Jennifer Teisinger, who's been working so hard to keep the ship going this whole summer. Orchestras around the country have been shutting down left and right, and we all still have jobs, and therefore we're all still be able to here to serve you and your music students. So I've got a lot of questions about virtual orchestra, virtual rehearsals, and what does that look like? Well, it's one of the greatest things about playing in an ensemble together is hearing each other and feeling like you are part of something bigger than yourself. And unfortunately, that is something that we will lose in a virtual sense, but we will gain ability to really focus on fundamental musical skills while at the same time still playing their instruments. So I have created this virtual content that we're going to do for the first month, actually half month until October, in order for us to get a jump start. Normally we would start the season in September, but because the virus has so thrown a wrench in our planning process, typically we would have our auditions in May, and then we would have the whole summer to plan out the new season. We've had to work so hard all summer to just figure out, pick up all the pieces, and so we still need about another month to really finish all of the planning and getting the music together for you guys. But in the meantime, I have connected with my colleagues from all around the country to figure out their best practices for how to create the experience of an orchestra as best we can separately. And what we are going to do, we're going to have a few components of every online rehearsal, but one of the key components is going to be playing along. The way that we'll do that is I will be the broadcaster. I'll be the guy in the middle with the buttons, or Mr. Paul will be the guy in the middle with the buttons with Philharmonia. And we will be broadcasting little recordings, which we can manipulate, make them faster, slower, louder, softer. And then everybody can play along. And then we can go one at a time and we can check in with a few people. This is what they've been doing around the country. And they started doing this in March when everybody had to go into quarantine. So they were able to rehearse in that sense and prepare for one of those virtual concerts that you guys might have seen. We've done the Oda Joy video, which was actually on TV. So a lot of you guys are on TV on Killerland Living. So that's sort of our backup plan. If worst case scenario, we're still going to be able to work on a product together and create a musical product together. But that's not what we expect is going to happen. What we expect is going to happen is we're going to have some sort of format of together rehearsal, like that we've worked so hard to create this safe, socially distant, but in-person rehearsal. So we will start in September working on the music that we're going to be working on throughout this first semester. We're also going to take this opportunity, since we can't be together in September, to talk about more fundamental musical skills. So talk about rhythm, talk about ear training, talk about music theory. We're going to integrate that into our practice that we're all going to do as a group, so that when we do get back in person, we're going to be so much more prepared for that first rehearsal. I have a feeling this will be the most prepared the orchestra has ever been for the very first rehearsal, which is typically a reading rehearsal. We've also created something called State of Our Art, which we've been doing all summer long, actually, to our youth orchestra students. We meet once a week for about an hour, and it's our innovation incubator, our creativity club. We explore how music works, how it's put together, how we perceive music, and importantly, we dive into the creative process. Music is a wonderful example and a test bed and a laboratory of creativity that we can apply to areas all throughout our life, in addition to how we make music. Creativity is more and more in demand as a skill for companies and for life events, and planning a wedding, planning a party, planning building a bridge, being a doctor. You have to think about creative ways of doing some of these things. And so we feel music is a wonderful laboratory to learn these creative skills. some activities we're going to be doing in SDSYO are we're all going to be writing a pop song. We're all going to be writing a piece of music in a relay race. So one person will write a measure, and then another person will write another measure, and we're going to put that together. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. We look at music from Mozart to Motown, from Beethoven to the Beatles, and we explore how that music works. Another component of our virtual content will be symposium. And this is another opportunity to bring in special guests, inspiring special guests who have had a interesting life in music. And we're going to learn about what got them there, what skills they have. We're going to have opportunity for our kids to interact with them and ask questions. We're also going to use this opportunity as in symposium to talk about in more detail about rhythmic skills, about ear training skills, some of these things that are really important, that are usually operating in the background of our musical life. This is a great opportunity for us to really focus on them in a concise way. And the internet is actually a really great way to do that. So we're looking forward to that. And I believe that answers most of the questions, I hope, about virtual.
There is one question we did get in the chat asking if there will be original sound for the Zoom rehearsals. And I'm assuming that means if they'll be producing music on their end.
Right, that's a wonderful question. So we will be sending a detailed how-to with the Zoom stuff. There's actually a new update that makes sound better. So we'll get into that in more detail when we get to the sessions. But basically what it's going to look like is everybody's going to be there and they're going to be muted. And then I can go in and individually unmute people. But you're going to be able to hear the music that I'm playing on a recording. And you're going to play along with it, which is a wonderful way of learning not only your part, but learning how your part integrates with the rest of the parts of the orchestra. So it's essentially, it's a guided practice session in context that will lead to a more robust and more awesome first rehearsal in October. Thank you, Alana, for that wonderful question.
Awesome. Again, in the virtual handbook that I provided you and on the PowerPoint presentation, there's a little more information as far as things to keep in mind when you're going to log on to these rehearsals. Make sure you're in a well-lit area, someplace that you can hear really well. If you have headphones, that's great. Not required, but it's just helpful to make sure that you can hear our conductors better. If you have any help, or if you need any help with any of this technology, with Zoom, anything, I know I'm kind of clunky with it myself, but I will help you as best as I can as we navigate this together. So if you have any questions about how the rehearsals are going to work starting next Sunday and Monday, the schedule is also provided on that PowerPoint for you for September. So again, just feel free to let me know of any questions you have whatsoever about those virtual rehearsals. So let's see, I will get my little thing up here again. Okay. So I'm just gonna do it this like side version because we're running out of time.
I talk too much.
It's okay. It's no. This is great. So just again, we're planning on doing in person with all of the safety protocols in place in October. As of now, the school district has very graciously allowed us to use George McGovern Middle School as our rehearsal venue. This is all very, I don't want to say last minute information, but it all happened very quickly. So that being said, I will have the full month of October scheduled to you out as soon as possible. With the season being as fluid as it is, I will release the whole calendar as it's available, but just to make sure everybody has the most up-to-date information, I will be providing a month-by-month calendar to you at least 2 weeks prior to the first rehearsal of every month. And again, I would also just reiterate to please make sure you're following all of the appropriate ensemble Google Calendar links. Each student should be following 2 different calendars, the one for their specific ensemble, as well as the SDSYO group calendar. The group calendar is where we'll have the symposium meetings, SUA meetings, and any sort of other all ensemble calendar items. So along with that, as of today, we have 3 concerts scheduled, and they are all going to be at the Washington Pavilion this year, which is kind of fun. As you can see there, we have them December 13th, February 28th, May 2nd. You will also find on the full calendar, once I have that released, we also have several Camerata recital dates coming up, the first being later in January. But yes, we will have plenty of opportunities to play out in public, hopefully very soon. So that brings me to a lovely little segue that I'm going to just take credit for without even looking ahead, to our extra groups within SDSYO, starting with Camerata, which, as some of you know, joined the SDSYO family last season. And I have 2 of our instructors here joining us to just give a little information about their individual groups and the program as a whole. So just as the program as a whole, let's start with Sue. Why don't you go ahead and just kind of explain for those who don't know what the Camerata groups, and then we'll take it to Robbie, who can kind of chat with people after I share my screen here. What the new cello ensembles will look like for this year.
Cello ensemble. That's the best ensemble you've ever had. Cello's the best.
Okay, just a brief introduction in case you don't know what Camerata is from last year. It basically means a chamber group, and meaning groups of 2 or 3 or 4 people, or maybe 5 or 6. Each one of the instructors has his or her own rehearsal space. So for instance, in my rehearsal space, I've got a great big huge room downstairs, and it turns a corner, so everybody up to at least 6 or 7 people can be 6 feet apart. And Beverly Gibson is the woodwind coach, and she rehearses at a church, and I'm not sure where Robbie's going to rehearse, but those of you who studied with Karen Melik-Stepanov and had some of his groups last year, he has retired. He has moved to Ohio. So number 1, if you were in one of his groups, let Jess know, and Robbie will be our new coach in place of him. And also, if you're looking for a cello teacher, I would recommend Robbie. So let me know, let Jess know if you would be interested in joining a small group. There are several small groups that are still extant from last year. There are some who have had people graduate and could use a new person in them. So let us know if you're interested. And one last thing, I was having a problem playing a string instrument, playing a violin or viola, wearing a mask, because the mask went up over my eyes and I couldn't see. And so if any of you, I solved that problem. So if any of you need to know that, if any of you are having problems with that, let me know. We'll be starting these groups around end of September, beginning of October, and it'll be in person. They meet once a week for about a half hour, depending on the group.
Can I jump in and ask, maybe some of our family have not had an experience of what chamber music is. So what is the difference between playing in a small ensemble and playing in a large ensemble, and what is the value of playing in a small ensemble?
The biggest difference is that you're responsible for your own part. So for instance, in a string quartet, there are 2 violins, but they have separate parts. There's a violist with a separate part. There's a cello with a separate part. So you're playing with other people, but you are completely responsible for your part. You can't depend on a section, like you won't have 54 flutes, as in marching band, all playing the same thing. So you have to learn how to count. You have to learn how to listen to other people and interact with them, how to pass themes back and forth between one instrument and another, how to blend when you're supposed to blend, how to cue when you're supposed to lead. And each person in a chamber group gets a new chance to lead, because sometimes the viola will have a tune, sometimes the cello will have a tune. It's not always the first violinist who's leading it. So there's a lot of chance to interact with musicians, just sort of as it's a musical conversation. And the literature is just so great. There's so much great music written for small groups, trios, duos, quartets, quintets, sextets. I mean, they're some of the greatest composers And some of them, you know, a lot of composers have written some of their best music for those groups because they weren't commissioned. That was just something they wanted to do. So from that standpoint, it's very valuable. If you learn how to follow each other and work with each other in a small group, then when you get to a large group, you can hear that and you can react the same way, even though it's more people that you're listening to. So.
Yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
Hi, yeah. Hello, everyone. My name's Robbie. I'm the new principal cello, and I teach now at Augustana University as well, and I have my own private studio here in Sioux Falls, and I'm really excited to be joining this chamber music program here through Camerata. I think I grew up playing chamber music. It's how I learned to be a musician. It's what held me accountable. I learned just as much from my peers as I learned from my teachers, I feel. And so that's the most wonderful thing about chamber music to me. So if you want to get involved with it, you absolutely should. Please contact Jess or contact me. Regarding this, I'm open to forming, I've already heard from a few cellists. We can form some cello ensembles. I'll work with Sue and see about maybe some string quartets or even duos. But it's a fantastic way, and it really is the best way in my mind to learn the skills that make you a better player, a better musician, a better communicator, in both musically and interpersonally, because you have to learn how to talk to your colleagues as well. So, and in addition to that, I am taking new students as well. So I have a space where I teach in a socially distanced way, and yep. So I'm happy to be in Sioux Falls, and thank you, Jess and Sue and Thomas and Jeff and everyone for everything they're doing. So looking forward to hearing some of you in person again.
I should add one other thing. The other faculty member for Camerata that I didn't mention right now is Sarah Richter, and she's the one that was on the same screen with me for a while when she was asking the question about masks. So she is also a really good coach and a fantastic violinist, and so we're looking forward to working with whoever wants to form a group.
If you want to learn, folks, about leadership, if you want to learn about teamwork, if you want to learn social skills, the best thing you can do is to be in a small ensemble. It's where I learned so much. And orchestra music is also a really great opportunity to focus on chamber music. My goal as a conductor is to create a chamber music of 100 people, a chamber ensemble. But the laboratory where you really get to hone those skills is in a place like Camerata. So we're so thrilled starting last year to have Camerata be a part of our program. And thank you so much to the both of you for being here today.
Yes, and again, if you are interested in joining one of the Camerata groups, or if you have any questions about any of the nitty-gritty details as far as tuition, we do offer some discounts if you are in both an SDSYO ensemble as well as the Camerata Chamber group. So if you have any questions as far as that, please let me know, and we would love to have you there. Very, very fun. So rolling right along, our second additional group that we have within SDSYO is the one that Thomas briefly mentioned earlier, which is SUA, State of Our Art. We have been meeting throughout this whole summer. We have not stopped doing all of this pandemic. It is every Sunday from 3 to 4 o'clock on Zoom. You can follow the link on our SDSYO calendar. Absolutely everybody is welcome. And Thomas, go ahead and give your little spiel on SUA.
So SUA stands for State of Our Art. It started when I had a few students from youth orchestra hand me scores that they had written for orchestra. They had their own compositions. And I realized that we needed to have a community of like-minded creative people within our orchestra, people who are interested specifically in what makes music work, how to write music, although many of our SUA members are not composers. But the process of learning the construction of how these great pieces are put together is what we talk about every week. It's open to anybody. And I really encourage you guys to stop in. We're going to be doing it on Zoom. Eventually, we're going to be doing it in person. But actually last year, before the pandemic hit, we had 7 full orchestra pieces ready to be performed on our very last performance cycle. So we were going to be performing 7 brand new pieces written by our very own South Dakota Symphony Youth Orchestra students. And they're going to be premiered in May. Unfortunately, we had to shut down. So we immediately went on Zoom. And since then, we've been listening to music from all around the world and all these different types of music and trying to figure out what makes it work. And we hope that through the investigation of music like that and the creative process, we will all be able to think more creatively and bring creativity to help solve the problems of our world and of our lives.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes. And when we mean all are welcome, seriously, if you have older brothers and sisters who are interested in this sort of thing, parents, like, please, it's very interesting. I've learned stuff every once in a while when I've listened in, so it's very, very fun. If you would like more information about that, again, please just let me know. You really don't have to even let me know if you're interested or RSVP. You can just show up, and again, everybody is welcome. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of a fun chance for people to talk about aspects of music that they don't always get to talk about with other students. So very fun. Jeff, I realize you haven't had a chance to speak. Did you want to say anything to the Philharmonia folks or anything? No pressure, I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything. But if you did want to speak, you're more than welcome to.
Nope.
Okay.
Well, I have to say how thankful I am to have Jeff as a partner in this. Jeff is one of those freaks of nature, those types of musicians who seems like he can do anything, and I wish I could do like half of the stuff that he can do. You'll hear him. I'll often be driving around, and I'll hear him on Jazz Nightly on the public radio, playing the piano in a jazz group, and then I'll hear him on a broadcast playing principal oboe. And he's a wonderful teacher, an incredibly patient and warm individual, and we're so lucky to have him working with Philharmonia. And Philharmonia has always been a really wonderful group to have as part of our organization. And so you guys, maybe some of the folks that are new to Philharmonia, you don't know how lucky you are to have Jeff. So Jeff, thanks so much for being here.
Awesome. Well, I know I can't see your faces, but I'm so excited to see your names on the side here. I'm so excited to start to get to work with you guys all again. Students, faculty, everyone. Again, please feel free to email me any questions or privately message me if you have anything that's still sort of on your mind as we prepare for our season launch next week, the 13th and 14th. Sunday begins with Youth Orchestra A and B. Monday will be Philharmonia A and B, as well as Sinfonia. If you have any questions as far as the schedule or how to log on to these rehearsals, I'm happy to walk you through it. Full disclosure, me, Thomas, and Jeff this week are going to do a practice rehearsal between the three of us to sort of troubleshoot any technology issues we may run into. So hopefully after that, I will have even more knowledge about this fun little Zoom thing. But again, I just want to thank you all so much for being here and taking the time to join us on your Labor Day weekend. I do understand it's a Sunday on a weekend, and I apologize that scheduling kind of forced our hand here, but again, please let me know if you have any questions, and we are so grateful for you all to trust us to make music together with you all for the next season.
Jess, I have to
Thomas.
we're having a few questions about this Orchestra A and B thing.
Oh,
so,
okay.
The reasoning behind Orchestra A and B was to just ensure that we had as much room in these rehearsal spaces as possible. And so in collaboration with people like Dr. Suttle, this is the solution we've come up with. So while we missed the opportunity of having really big orchestras, like we used to have like 40, 50 people in a room at once, we have the added benefit of having something a little bit like a chamber music experience. And we're actually going to be looking at some really wonderful pieces of music that are very open to different parts. I'm actually going to be having you guys write your own pieces, and we're going to be having some improvisation in addition to core repertory, Bach and Beethoven, that type of thing. But specifically to answer the question about youth orchestra A and B, as well as Philharmonia A and B. So yes, we will be playing different music. I'm treating them as different ensembles. We're looking at, hopefully, if there's a vaccine or if things get better, getting back together. And we also are looking at potentially rehearsing one piece separately and then combining them so that we can play them together in our concert in December. The nice thing about having the pavilion is we have a really big space to utilize, so we can actually socially distance everybody safely. But besides that, A and B, there's no different level. It's not varsity and non-varsity, A team and B team. It was literally like, okay, we want to make sure we have a flute player in both groups. All right, we want to make sure we have equal number of violins. So you're going to see strong players in both groups and leaders in both groups. And we try to split up as best as we can. So this is, I think this is very different than anything we've ever done, folks. But
Music we're hoping to get this week.
yes, this is very different than anything we've ever done. But I think that you're going to find the teacher to student ratio of having one teacher for 16, 17 players versus 40 is really going to make up for the loss of that experience of having 50 people playing. And we're also going to have an opportunity for every voice to be really, really critical. We're going to have, you might be the one and only clarinet player in the orchestra. And so your voice is incredibly important. And it's as if you're performing like a soloist with 14 of your, 15 of your other friends. So I'm so glad that you guys have signed on for this. And yeah, once again, Ethan asked, are they based on skill level? No, it's based on how can we divide this group down the middle and make sure we have the same amount of kazoos in both groups and the same number of double reed slide music stands in both, and violins and violas, although they're not well, I won't do any viola jokes because Sue's here. But let's see if I can just answer any of the quick questions. So looks like Jeff is saying he's planning on having Phil, they'll be learning the same music. So it's a little different with Philharmonia, but for youth orchestra, I can talk about that. Jeff, do you want to just say a few words about Philharmonia and the A and B system and what you're planning there? Looks like we can't hear Jeff. He looks like he unmuted himself.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear
Is
you
this a
now.
little bit better? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, my current plan for Philharmonia is for A and B to be rehearsing and learning the same repertoire. And if we need to divide it once it comes to culmination of a concert time, then we will do that if there are too many people to fit on stage. Otherwise, the plan is for everyone to come together and play at the concert in person.
So thank you, Jeff. So Jeff and I have a little bit of a different thing. Maybe I'm making my life more difficult by having more music to arrange, but yeah, we're gonna look at some fun stuff. I'll give you a sneak peek, folks, of a piece that we're looking at right now. One of them is the Jazz Waltz from Shostakovich. So it's sort of jazz, but it's a really beautiful piece, and I think Shostakovich is a really great composer that a lot of you guys really like to play. We're also going to do some Bach. So for another group, we're going to be doing my arrangement of the Bach Sarabande from the cello suites. Since I'm a cellist and that music is so close to me, the 6th cello suite in D major has maybe my favorite piece of music ever written. And I've arranged it for string orchestra. And now I'm rearranging it so that all parts of the orchestra, all instruments can join in and enjoy that incredible harmony that Bach so well does. And I see Robbie nodding his head. And I know Sue also likes Bach because she's a viola player. So, and we're still working on some more stuff, and we'll have news very soon. I'm looking right now for Symphonia of doing the Blue Danube Waltz, which is going to be a lot of fun. Some waltzing 3/4 music. So we'll spin around in circles and play our violin.
hopefully not get too dizzy.
Yeah, vomit bag. Well, never mind. 6X.
We're buying enough stuff. We might as well add it. I'm kidding. We're not going to try and induce nausea for any students. On that note, again, thank you all so much, panelists, staff, students, parents. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions. And again, thank you so much for your patience as we navigate these uncertain days, weeks, months ahead. Just know that we have all of your best interests at heart, and we are hoping to make music together all again very soon, starting next week with our virtual lessons. So with that, enjoy your Sunday night, enjoy the rest of your Labor Day weekend. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.